Hey guys, this is Sam. It's Monday evening, immediately after Nottingham Comic Con, which was Saturday just gone. I'm kind of tired, but I had a fantastic time. It was a really great show. Spoiler alerts, I think it's my highlight of the year. There's a lot of things I did right, and we're going to talk about that in some detail. I do want to talk about the weekend as a whole, because there are a couple of anecdotes and stories there, which I think you'd enjoy. So we're just going to dive on in and start with Friday, which was 3 separate trains to then get into Nottingham. A 25-minute walk to the hotel, which is just your bog standard, Premier Inn. You get exactly what you expect. I found out after arriving at the hotel and after doing a 25-minute walk with all my stock, which is pretty damn heavy, I was just sweating like anything, needed a shower straight away, that there is a tram line running from the train station to pretty much the hotel's doorstep, and I could have just taken that for about £1.80 and saved myself that walk. So I knew that for the journey home, but yeah, on the way in, it was a bit, ooh, bloody hell. So no one else was about for a lot of Friday, as I understand it, so I sort of, popped out, had a look around Nottingham, got to try some new experiences. For example, they're rolling out Taco Bell in the Midlands and the North, to see how it goes. And me living down south, I've only ever seen a Taco Bell in America, so that was a novelty. I went to Forbidden Planet because, of course, you sort of have to go to one if there's one nearby. And they're still very much the Tesco of comic shops. Like, you don't expect the intimate knowledge, the personalized service, and the, don't expect it to be a tribute to comics. You sort of know what you're getting, and true to form, Forbidden Planet was 2/3 plastic tat, 1/3 actual comics, and a lot of that was Funko Pops. A lot of that was, DC figures, and a lot of it was Rick and Morty shit that I honestly just don't care for. The third that was comics admittedly let me down. Forbidden Planet seemed to have this perpetual 3-for-2 deal on manga, so if there's one nearby, I always stock up, because, manga can get expensive otherwise. I was looking for, just, like, the next 3-volume batches of everything I'm currently reading. So, like, My Hero Academia is the one I really wanted. I need 6, 7, 8. They had, I think it was 6 and 8, but no 7. And if I can't get the batch of 3, I'm not getting anything. So that was out. Nisekoi 4, 5, 6. I think they had a 5 and a 7. No 4, no 6. So that was out. Then looked at the Tsubasa Chronicles omnibuses. Only had 2 onwards. I want to start at the start for that one. So that was also out. It was a little bit disappointing, to be honest. I went in wanting to spend money. I was thinking in my head, I could probably spend 20 to 30 quid healthily and not have to worry about it. And I came out with nothing. So I guess that is their loss. But hey, if they've not got it in, they've not got it in. What are you going to do? I then went to Page 45, which is an independently run comic shop in Nottingham. And the comparison between that and Forbidden Planet is like night and day. It's very upmarket, very, like, it takes comics very seriously. You go in and it's like these black wooden shelves, and there are these, big, thick, independent hardcovers, and there's some, really good all ages books in there as well, like the Hilda series, and sort of a lot of Avery Hill, a lot of Nobrow Press, a lot of just a lot of small press stuff, and it's right front and center, right at the very front of the store. Literally, you go in the door, you turn left, bang, you're there, and it was fantastic to see, in all honesty. The mainstream comics, your DC, your Marvel, etc., which would usually be at the front in any other comic shop, is way, way in the back corner. It is sort of it's got a very upmarket, very sophisticated vibe. It's sort of elevating the art form and saying, this isn't just for kids, there's stuff for adults too, and actually comics are something to be celebrated, and you shouldn't, be made to feel embarrassed or immature by reading them. One friend did point out that that can sometimes come across as a little exclusionary and elitist. It's certainly not the impression that I got while I was in the store. However, in hindsight, thinking about what they said, I can see how someone might draw that conclusion. However, I was very, very impressed with page 45, and whenever I find myself in Nottingham, I'm definitely going to give them a visit. There are a couple of other places I wanted to check out as well, mainly for video games. Unfortunately, the main one I wanted to look at, it was clear it had been closed down for some time and that another shop was going to go in there. So that was a bit of a bust. But I did get to meet up with some people in the evening. So you've got Sarah Harris, friend to comic creators as a whole, and always an awesome person to hang out with. We met up, went down for just, a couple of pints and some food, put out the call on the Awesome Comics Talk Facebook group to say, look, if anyone else is about, we're here, we're in this pub, come find us. And Alan Henderson, who does the Penned Gwyn's, and his wife Moira came along, and they joined us, and that was a good evening of just setting the world to rights. And there was Sarah ended up taking us to this proper rock pub, where she was telling me the bar stuff and the coasters and such probably haven't changed for 30 years. It's all sort of older guys in Black Sabbath shirts and stuff, proper rock pub. So that was a lot of fun. Saturday morning, actually got up, got some breakfast, and just went onto Google Maps to see how far from the venue I was. And by coincidence, I had booked a hotel where I could pretty much see the front door of the venue for the Comic Con, which was the business centre of Nottingham University, essentially. I could more or less see it from the front door of my hotel, so that was a straight shot, straight in, very simple and clean setup. The organisers were there on the door, quick and happy to direct people to their tables. It was just extremely smooth, no hassle, no delay, just straight in. Bumped into Stuart Mulrain and Andy Hanks on the way in. Managed to have a quick catch up with them, and very much looking forward to True Believers Comic Con True Believers Comic Festival in February at the Cheltenham Racecourse. That's just going to be amazing. It usually is a good time, so yeah, very much looking forward to that. Got set up at the table. Sarah Millman from Heart of Time and NPCT arrived, along with Sian Jefferson, who does Shoosh. I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is a comic about her cat. So they both arrived together. I accidentally sent them to the opposite side of the room to where their table was because they asked me for directions, and I cocked it up, which I'm still apologising for. Even though they very graciously accepted the first apology, for some reason I feel like I should probably apologise another 20 or 30 times, and then it'll probably be okay. So yeah, they then went to get set up at the right table, where they were supposed to be, instead of listening to my stupid, idiotic directions. The day itself actually ran very, very smoothly. I was with Matt Harrower. He was my table neighbour on one side, and guy was a true gent. He was a lot of fun to talk to. He has a really good laid-back attitude towards comics, so he's like, day job pays the bills, and if I sell okay here, I sell okay here. If I don't, I don't. As long as, the people coming to the convention have fun, as long as he has fun behind the table, everything's good. He gets a weekend away out of it. He's happy. And it's a very similar mindset to the one that, I'm trying to promote myself. And, yeah, we just got on like a house on fire. It was great. He actually gave me a print at the end of the show, which is on the wall already, just up there. I'm not sure if it's actually in view of the camera. I've just sort of right, let's get this recorded because it's Monday, I'm knackered, and if I still want this to be up before Monday ends, then I don't have a whole lot of time, which is a real good excuse for me to ramble like I'm doing right now. In short, Matt Harrower, good guy, very, very good artist. Check out his stuff. It's very dynamic. There's a lot of passion in it, and just really like what he does. He was doing a Big Barda sketch at one point that absolutely blew me away. It was incredible stuff. The other side of me was Dead Canary. They've put out things like Frogman, Last Driver, etc. Admittedly, did not interact with them as much. There was something they seemed to be talking through that was clearly quite important to them, so I sort of left them to that. And there were periods as well where they were sort of like at panels and such, so they weren't always at the table. So regrettably, I didn't engage with them probably quite as much as I should have. Who else did we see at the show? Because there was a lot going on at the show. So what it might be easier to do is actually go through the pickups in the order that I bumped into people, because, well, no, I should be able to remember. So Steve Tanner came over and said hello. He's just had the Kickstarter for Ragamuffins. He's on the 10th anniversary of his little indie publishing house, Time Bomb Comics. It's fantastic that someone has been in the indie circuit for 10 years and still wants to do it. And, you know, Steve puts out good stuff, so it's no surprise that he's been able to continue doing it for that long, especially Flintlock. That's probably his best work so far, so absolutely recommend that very highly. Vince Hunt and Tony Esmond were there, both as the Awesome Comics podcast, and also Vince promoting Stalkerville, Red Mask from Mars, and his Mandy the Monster Hunter strips for Comic House Anthology. So Tony actually came over and did a mini sort of 5-minute interview with me, where I may have referred to my best friend as an apathetic arsehole, but in context it's okay, because I'm saying that I would really like to collab with him and you know, draw a story that he had written. If I could just light a fire under his ass and get him to actually write something, I think he'd be good at it. So if you want to hear it in context, check out the Awesome Comics podcast, which is something you should do anyway. They have really become a pillar of the community. They've brought a lot of creators together, and it's just something really funny to listen to on a Monday that, you know, start of the week, you need your spirits lifting, and the Awesome Comics podcast will do that for you. Plus, I'm in it this week, so, you know, you sort of gotta now. I bumped into Rachel Smith, who, of course, has got her Kickstarter going for Wired Up Wrong Deluxe Edition, and you should check that out, because not only is it an amazing book, but I'm in the Kickstarter video, so, you know, you sort of gotta. Let's stop being vain for a second, and concentrate on what it is I'm trying to say. Nanabeam, however it's pronounced, who does Mephistos, was opposite me. Unfortunately, I didn't really get much chance to say hi. Susie Gander was there launching Periwinkle, and she seemed to have a great time and a really strong launch. You had the Reckless Hero Boys, so, you know, the two Chris's, with Last Sheriff and Operation Boom. John Late was there. Nick Prolix was there with Slang Pictorial. Emily Mitchell and Gavin Mitchell were there with Brain Shoodles and Trolltooth Wars. This convention, what really stood out was it was sort of... Oh, and the Attic Studios guys, so Dan Harris and crew, were also there with, you know, their multitude of books, Druid Investigations, Loose Scanner, and so on and so forth. What became very apparent very quickly is that this was a convention focused on comics. This was, you know, pretty much the entire upper floor I was on was indie comic artists. A lot of the lower ground floor was, again, independent artists. Not all of them had a comic, but at the very least they were doing their own prints and charms and that kind of thing. There was very little commercial tact at the convention. So Forbidden Planet had a few tables, you know, next to each other, fine. It was really quite minimal, you know. There was no sort of big wall of fan art prints or anything like that. It was very concentrated. They knew what they wanted, and they put that in there, and, you know, it was a good 4 or 5 different stores with back issue sellers and such. So I was really happy from that regard, just to see that it was a very comics heavy event. Didn't rely so much on, you know, video games and movies and TV shows. Didn't rely on movie guests and TV stars to bring people through the door. And they didn't need that because it was heaving. There were a ton of people at this convention. Footfall was pretty high, pretty much the entire time. It was fantastic. And it was a lot of families as well, which is great because we need kids to get into comics, so make sure that there is another generation of comic fans after us grumpy old sods cop it. So, no, it was a really positive atmosphere, really positive vibe. You had the helpers coming around of like a bucket of sweets to keep energy up. When you got to your table, what was really nice was that there was a little envelope with, the panels, so all of the panels that were going on, and from what I hear from others, the panels were excellent. So you had the timetable, there was a floor map in there was a key information, so like this is where the toilets are, this is where, like cash points are, this is where it's good to get food and drink, all that kind of stuff, which was just amazingly useful information, and you'd be surprised how many comic convention organisers don't bother to give you that. Like, there were complimentary bottles of water in there, and you were just really, really well looked after. I think Kev Brett and his team did an amazing job in making sure that everyone who was exhibiting, had a good time. And the other major thing, I have never had that much space behind my table at a comic convention. They hadn't crammed the tables in as close together as possible. They had left enough of a gap at the side of each table that people could easily get in and out from, to get in front of the table and behind it when they needed to. So, like, sometimes, if, it's halfway through the day and you need to neaten up the stock, other conventions, you sort of have to walk behind 5 other tables to then get to an end to come out, then walk past those 5 same tables to get to the front of yours, neaten everything back up, then back past the 5 tables again to duck back round behind. No, you had a small little gutter gap at each side of your table, so if you needed to pop in and out, you could very easily, very simply, and it was at no detriment to the layout. I don't understand why more cons don't do that, because it was incredibly helpful, and I was certainly very grateful for it. As well, behind me, usually at a convention, you sort of tuck your chair in under the table, so the table edge is about there. And then if you've got a banner stand behind the chair there, that's it. That's your table space. That's everything you've got. You're working with about maybe 6 inches of space. This was, I just seriously have not had that much space. Even because I was in the middle, the next table behind me was way, way away. But even people who were on the edges still had sort of like from the back of my chair here to my back wall there in terms of space between them and the back wall. And again, that is an unheard of amount of space at a comic convention. And it's very much appreciated. We don't like being cramped in like sardines at other shows. We really don't. So just to see that Kev knew that and understood that was really great, because it meant there was a conscious thought and a conscious effort, and it was very much appreciated. So thank you, Kev, for that. The only blip in the day really was that a fire alarm went off. But even then, we were out of the building and back in very, very quickly. They let exhibitors back in first so that we could man the tables again before they let the public in, and also to make sure that no one could get back to our tables before we could, in case anyone had a 5-finger discount idea going on, which, again, from the attendance there, everyone was lovely, so I highly doubt that would have been the case anyway. But it was really good. What made it great as well was that the other attendees, we were all joking and laughing about it outside. Everyone was in really high spirits. Vince Hunt took what's probably my favourite photo from the entire weekend, and posted it on Twitter just saying, you know what, you can't put comic artists down. And it's just a bunch of people smiling, laughing, and giving a thumbs up to the camera. Fantastic. We all got back in. Okay, there were a couple of, civilians and punters who'd sort of seen the fire alarm and then called it a day, but I don't think it hurt things that much at all. I do know Tony said he had a panel going on, which was just starting when the fire alarm went off. And it was still a packed room when they went back into that panel after the fire alarm to pick up where they left off. Still packed. So, no, I don't think it had that much of an impact. And as I say, it was very well dealt with. And it just gave us all something to talk about in the pub, to be honest. So we did a few pickups at the show, and I'm going to quickly run through now. Before I do the pickups, just because I've realised it's on top of the pile here, because I should probably plug it. As you know, Unfamiliar Skies issue 2 launched at the show, so this is now available to order in physical form from my Big Cartel store, and you can get it on Comixology as of the 18th of October, so this Wednesday if you'd prefer a digital copy. So Unfamiliar Skies issue 2, it is out, you can get hold of it, and you absolutely should. Right. That's enough self-promotion. Now it's time to talk about other people. So, Sarah Millman, MPCT issue 3 is here. I haven't had a chance to read through it yet. It is very much at the top of the pile. I've been looking forward to this. I backed it on Kickstarter, so instead of posting it out as just sort of like just bring it to me at the convention, it's fine. And she actually had the foresight to have that as an option on the Kickstarter, so yeah, I think that's good. I like getting things in person anyway. It feels nicer. But yeah, this series has been fantastic for issues 1 and 2, and I'm sure issue 3 will just carry on and continue to impress. You've got Periwinkle from Susie Gander, which is somewhat autobiographical, so it's based on her own struggles with cancer, and it's all about a superhero called Periwinkle who sort of helps you through that and goes into the body to fight off the disease, and it's just really interesting. I've read a little bit of it on the train already, and what I've read has been bang on. I need to get the rest of it read as soon as possible, but the first few pages have been really engaging. I think it was only because I had to swap trains that I actually put it back in my bag and haven't just picked it up again since. So yeah, I might actually read the rest of this tonight before I go to sleep. Yeah, fantastic work. Next we have Sean Doby, Descending Outlands, number 4 of 5. I can't believe he's cranking these out as quickly as he is, because the dude's certainly putting me to shame, put it that way. And yeah, it's one that I'm really looking forward to digging into and reading. And I think actually once number 5 is out, I keep talking about doing review videos of small press, and there's been a lot of talk recently about the lack of reviews in small press, or how all small press reviews are essentially, if it's good you review it, otherwise you don't. And I think all small press books are, I'm impressed by the fact that a small press book comes out. I know what dedication is required for that. However, I do think, well, I've certainly put out books in the past and wanted feedback that isn't always necessarily there. Like, you want to know what works and what doesn't, so that you can take that into your next book and make your next book that much better. When I last thought about doing reviews, my concern was that it might come across badly. Like, people might be like, well, who are you? Do you have some kind of superiority complex? But I think so long as I position it right, then I could really help people out. I don't think it's any different to, offering to look at something for a friend before it comes out and going, okay, I like this, this, and this could probably be changed. I think as long as it's done in the right way, then it should be alright. And then the last not the last pickup, the second to last pickup was Guardians of the Galaxy Original Sin. It's something I've been meaning to pick up for a while. A stall had it for £8, so I was like, you know what, for £8, I'm just going to grab it. Ed McGuinness on art duties. If you've listened to many of these, you know my opinions on McGuinness already, so I don't think I really need to explain that again. We also had the final pickup was the A3 Jam print from the Awesome Comics podcast, which is up on the wall there. Unfortunately, despite my best efforts and despite Matt Harrow very kindly giving me an A3 sleeve to travel it home in, it did still take a few dings and that, but who cares? It still looks awesome. Couple of battle scars from its travels just add some history and story to it. You know, it's fine. So, the Saturday evening was a bit weird. I'd been invited out for drinks by a couple of different people, and what quickly became apparent was that these weren't 3 or 4 invites to the same drinking sessions, and no one, as far as I was aware, no one had really put a plan together. So I think, like for true believers and such, I might have to like do a Facebook event thing so we can all actually decide where we're going, what we're having beforehand, and so that instead of 4 or 5 separate smaller drinking sessions going on in different pubs, we can have one big one. There are certainly people that I wanted to meet up with that and I'd said to them, yes, I'm looking forward to having a drink and talking to you later, and I didn't end up talking to them, not to any fault of their own, but simply because we were on 2 different drinking sessions in 2 different pubs, and despite best efforts, our paths did not cross throughout the night. So, at any rate, I went out for food and drinks with Rachel Smith and a few others, and that was a lot of fun. A few of those creators, I was meeting for the first time, essentially, and it was... What's really reaffirming about indie comics is that even if it's someone you're meeting for the first time, they talk to and treat you like a friend they've known for years, and it's a really inclusive environment. It is something where people are so open and so welcoming and so friendly that you cannot help but feel humbled by this community. It was a fantastic night out, had a hell of a lot of fun, and thankfully my hotel room wasn't too far away, because I certainly needed it by the end of the night. Admittedly, Sunday morning, I actually left on an earlier train than I'd planned to, just because I sort of wanted to... I'd sort of spent about what I'd intended to spend, so going, round the shops again or what have you didn't really serve much of a purpose other than to possibly go into the overdraft. But, and also, sort of as a point where I'd had a really good time, but I did want to get back to the other half and the kids and, just spend some time with my family. So it was an earlier train, meant I'd get back about 2 hours earlier than planned. Annoyingly, the second train out of the 3 was delayed by 1/4 of an hour due to poor track conditions, which then meant I missed the connecting train. So I had to wait 25 minutes for the next one, which, you know what, there have been worse waits in the world, 25 minutes. So got on that one, and there was no driver. It got announced after we'd been sat on the train not moving for a good 10 minutes. So by the time they had found a driver and we'd gotten moving and all the rest of it, I actually, the missus and the kids had been stood on a platform waiting for me at the other end. And I ended up being an hour later getting there than I said I'd be. So she had to contend with 2 screaming kids and a car park timer ticking down. So when they got there to meet me at the train station, they were very excited. By the time I eventually arrived, I don't think they were quite as excited anymore. It was just really good to see them. You always miss them more than you realise, I think. But no, so it was a fantastic weekend. I'm very much looking forward to the next one. My next one now is True Believers in Cheltenham in February. So I'm hoping maybe that I can socially meet up with a few of the creators in the meantime, sort of between now and Christmas, just sort of arrange a hangout or something, because I like these people. I'd like to see them outside of just the convention circuit. And I know a couple of those creators watch this, so, and we all know where each other are. Like, a lot of us tend to be concentrated in the southwest, Sort of like Wiltshire through to Wales. So it's absolutely, we should sort something out, and just hang out. That'd be fun. No convention attached for a change. In fact, it got mentioned as well on this week's Awesome Comics podcast by Vince Hunt that we should just arrange a meetup, no convention attached. And I know I've met Vince, one-on-one a couple of times, no convention attached, and it's been a hell of a time. But Nottingham Comic Con was fantastic in all regards. One thing I did have to go in with was that I would make a loss because we're small press, and that's what usually happens. And arguably, going in with that mindset might have contributed to it. But I always wanted to be honest and give a breakdown of costs and takings and such for you, so that anyone who's aspiring knows what to expect. And I always say, treat it like gambling. Do not put any money in that you can't afford not to get back. So if you need that money to pay the rent, pay the rent. Don't do the Comic-Con, because there's no guarantees with this. I was actually very, very happy. So I went. It was £141 for the hotel, 55 for the table, and I am doing these numbers off the top of my head, so maybe a little bit out. So that puts us on about 190, or 196, and then it was £79 for the train. So overall, you're looking at about £275, £280 down. Takings were £85. So overall, it cost me about £200 to £210 to do the show. However, it was a show where I had a fantastic weekend away, and I absolutely could have brought those costs down if I'd have chosen to say, go up on the train that morning, get a train straight back immediately after the convention. That was on the edge of plausibility. Like, I probably could have just about made that work, and I chose not to. So absolutely those costs were higher because I chose to make them higher. I wanted to get there the day before and not have to rush about the next morning. I wanted to be at the table well rested and well prepared. I wanted to go out for drinks and food with people after. I wanted to, not have to worry about missing a train or being back for a certain deadline, and saying the Saturday night allowed me to do that. And £210 for what turned out to be a fantastic weekend away, seeing a bunch of people that truly feel like family. Absolutely worth it. Anytime. Absolutely anytime. So, even on that side of things, although I made a loss, I was perfectly happy. In fact, in terms of sales, I did better than I thought I would. What really surprised me is that although Unfamiliar Skies issue 2 was a new book on the table, had the largest portion of the table devoted to it, was what I was plugging the most, is that there was a lot of interest still in Joe Cape, which was the 3-issue series I did before Unfamiliar Skies. And while I want to do a season 2 because there are some loose ends and some unanswered questions to wrap up, at the moment it's very much on hiatus while I concentrated on Unfamiliar. And there was actually still a surprising amount of interest in Joe Cape. There was a point in time where I thought that, it was superhero parody. It felt like selling milk to a dairy farmer. They're good. They don't necessarily need it. And Joe Cape, I'll be the first to admit, certainly did not light the world on fire. So my brain was playing a little bit with, well, if I make this season 2, is there anyone who wants it? And what Nottingham showed me, actually, surprisingly, was yes. There was interest in the series. People did want it. And actually, the sales of Joe Cape were keeping pace with Unfamiliar Skies, which means both series are viable. In fact, Joe Cape, issue 1, the first print run, I am now down to my last 4 copies. Once those 4 copies are gone, then Joe Cape issue 1 will be sold out. And then I have the question of, what I do about a potential reprint and that sort of thing, which is, something that I do need to think about. Because my first ever comic, Arcadia, which is just up there. That's been out of print for a year, 2 years now, and I've not yet gone back to reprint that. So, do I reprint issue 1? Do I try and sell the remaining 2s and 3s to people who already have one, and then do a trade of 1, 2, and 3 instead of a reprint? There's a lot of questions there that I need to think about and consider now, because that did surprise me, and in a very good way. What else is there? Because there's other stuff. I'm not going to comment on the drama around the lakes this weekend. I hope the convention went down well. I think, it seems like those who did attend it had a very good time, which is always good to see. It's a shame that they both clashed, Nottingham and the Lakes, but what can you do? I am probably going to wrap this one up here just to say that, Nottingham, I think there's a lot of conventions that could learn from it. Obviously, it's my last for the year now, so February we'll get going again. Hopefully get some new books made and some new content out in the meantime. But yeah, I had a hell of a lot of fun. And actually, there was something else, yes. It was something... Actually, I was in two minds about talking about on here, but I already talked about it on my personal Facebook, so... why not? Because most of the people who watch this are on my personal Facebook anyway. A lot of the times when I do conventions, there are a lot of things that I struggle with, like, being on packed trains makes me uncomfortable. I worry about timings, am I going to make my connecting train? Is this, that, and the other going to work out? Are there going to be any cancellations? That sort of thing. Navigating towns and cities that I'm not familiar with. How accurate is Google Maps? If I stare at that, you're making yourself a target to everything else because you're not paying attention to your surroundings. You don't want to look too much like a tourist because, again, you make yourself look like a target. Unfamiliar surroundings in general, make you uneasy. And, there's other concerns. Like, I don't do well with people. I really don't. I have to make a real effort with people, and I usually get socially anxious. I usually worry about how things I've said might be interpreted weeks after the conversation has ended, because I like to torture myself for some reason. I usually get quite homesick. I start really missing the other half and the kids and my own bed and all that kind of thing. I never know what to say to strangers, so like pitching all weekend and things like that is really quite tricky. And there's always a constant concern of, can I afford this? Which then puts a sales pressure in place, which you just don't want. And it's just almost to the point where someone hearing that might think, why the hell do you do conventions? And in the past it was always because the pros outweigh the cons. I've got to say, for the first time ever, I didn't have any of that. Free trains, free changes, packed to the rafters each way. I just handled it fine. Delays, cancellations, and all. Just sort of took it as it came, one small problem at a time, rolled off my shoulder. There was no reaction to it. At the convention itself, it was a very good atmosphere. I didn't feel... I felt very comfortable. I felt looked after. A lot of the other people there were people I knew. I felt very safe. I felt really good, actually. Really good. It was it felt more like coming home than going somewhere I didn't know. And like, even on the money side of things, okay, I took quite a long hiatus from conventions, and during that hiatus I got a much better paying job. And this convention, alongside the Kickstarter to pay for Unfamiliar Skies 2's print run, I've been saving every month for this convention and putting money aside for this convention, so that there was a pot there to spend specifically on this convention. There were like video game purchases I didn't make, I don't have a comic book pull list right now, except for Spider-Man 2, which is only a 5-issue mini anyway. There are a lot of... I made a lot of changes to make sure that there would be a pot of money for this convention, so I didn't have that concern about can I afford this. I didn't have that concern about, oh, I need to sell X number of copies, because if it went down the drain, it went down the drain, and it wasn't going down the drain because I was having a good time. And I think part of that is due to everyone else at the show. I didn't have to deal with any awkward situations. You know, there were no creepers that I was aware of, and I do know that obviously as a guy I have to deal with fewer creepers than I would if I was a female creator anyway, which is an unfortunate fact of life. You know, for them, obviously, I get off easy, but it shouldn't be that way in the first place. Creepers shouldn't be a thing. It was just a really friendly environment. Like I say, lots of families there. There was nothing that ever made me feel uncomfortable, and like I say, all of the other exhibitors and, you know, like regular attendees as well, were just awesome, and it all came naturally and it all flowed. And for the first time, I really truly came away thinking, I've got this. I think I've got this under control. I think I can do this, enjoy it fully, and not have any of the nastiness, which is great. So I hope that continues. Thank you very much for watching. I know this has been a long one, but I will see you very soon.